Hey gang, so we're once again back out in the Laguna recreation area, Cleveland National Forest. We're hiking W6 SD-026. It's kind of a nondescript hill here next to the highway, so that's really not why we're here to talk about. We're a lot of you in our comment section and emails have asked me. I did a previous video on my favorite antennas and my favorite masts, and wanted me to kind of like talk more about them. So today we're going to kind of, I guess the whole idea of this video is going to be around my favorite antenna for SOTA activations is the Bandhopper made by SOTAbeams. Now, before we get too far into this, one thing I want to make clear: I'm not monetized, I'm not sponsored, I paid retail for this. I'm not an engineer. What these opinions come from is a lot of activations. And we've got to keep in mind, SOTA activation, the antennas you take up are a lot different than the ones you put up in your home. To me, they're all somewhat compromised because we're not putting them up at the optimal height, and we don't have the infrastructure around it. So all of them are kind of like a little bit weird. But that being said, it's really hard to evaluate them because most SOTA activations are on mountaintops, and we all know that on a mountaintop, no matter what antenna you got, it's going to mess with your angle of radiation because everything falls away around you. So this is just based on, you know, years and years of QRP activity. That being said, a lot of these antennas, especially the SOTAbeam ones, are good up to about 125 watts. So it's an antenna you could use QRO also. So today we're looking at the Bandhopper, and we're going to kind of break away from this location and do a couple discussion points, because first off, we haven't even started hiking up the hill and we got a stiff wind. I'm sure you can hear it, and I think up the top's going to be miserable. But we'll talk a little bit more about this Bandhopper, and let's look at the current solar conditions. So we're looking, actually, the flux got up to a 73, but now I'm a little bit worried that that solar wind is still cranking pretty good and the BZ component's a little bit off. So we'll see, but we're going to try. We're going to start off on 15, 17, 20, and then do some 30 and 40. And we're all going to do them with the two different Bandhoppers I carry. So that being said, here's today's trail. It's simple. Mile in, mile out, about 573 feet of elevation gain. The better part of it is basically off trail. There's a little use trail that goes to the top, so it's not a designated trail. And then again, we're going to talk a little bit about the antenna in more detail, and we're going to talk about the masts I use in more detail, and anchoring them and guying them. And I do know for a fact that, because I've activated this peak before, there's a nice metal stake driven up at the top that in the past I've just lashed to. We'll see. This wind could be weird up there, so we'll see what we got up there. So let's get going. All right, so let's go back to the park in Temecula, because it's not really good to demonstrate an antenna out here. Let's talk a little bit about the two Bandhoppers I use. We'll set them up, we'll look at them, and remember, if you're inclined, you're a talented person, all these antennas we're looking at today can be built. I mean, if you want to build one, but I really like resonant wire antennas, so these link dipoles. So we'll go take a look at it. Okay, so we wanted to come off trail to have this discussion because it's just blowing way too hard up there. I said at the beginning of this video, one of my favorite antennas for SOTA POTA activations is the Bandhopper, and the biggest pro of this antenna is the fact that it's a resonant wire antenna. Do you need anything more than that? It's pretty dang good. There are some cons though, and let's talk about those. A, it's got a massive footprint. Well, let's look how big of a footprint this typically has for setup. Yeah, you can see that requires a lot of distance. given that also, if you don't have any help and you're in heavy brush, it can be near impossible to set up. Many times, had I not had Sherry with me, I'd have never gotten the antenna up. It just wouldn't have happened. So the nice thing about the Bandhopper is it's pretty complete. It comes with a pre-cut wires. Now there's two versions. There's the high hopper and the mid hopper. This is the mid hopper here, and this is a good low solar cycle antenna in that it covers 40, 30, and 20. And then this one in here is the high hopper, and that one I've got great expectations for because that's the one I'm using for in this activation, and it covers 15, 17, 20. And so the only problem with that is, opposed to like a random wire with a tuner, is if you want to move from band to band between that split from 20 to 30, and that you've got to change out your whole hopper. But the trade-off is you've got a really good resonant antenna. Comes with 33 feet of RG-174. That just had to be that way. It would have never fit in the bag. It would have been too heavy, too stiff. RG-174 is kind of lossy, and when you're a QRP operator like me, you just freak out at loss. So, but that's acceptable. It's only 33 feet, and it's not that bad. It has a 1-to-1 Balum on it, and the 1-to-1 Balum just keeps that RF from piling back at you. This thing is pretty much ready to go. Now, that being said, remember, a lot of you guys are really creative. That doesn't include me. If I had a 3D printer in my house, there'd be a fire truck out in front right now putting the garage fire out. I'm just that way. So that being said, you can make this antenna. In fact, I'd recommend, if you're getting into POTA and SOTA, maybe one of your first projects should in fact be a link dipole resonant antenna. I think you'll be really happy with it. Because like I said, I've gone through all kinds of antennas. I've gone through loaded verticals, I've gone through random wires, which are okay, and I've gone through end-fed slopers, and this one just seems to perform a little bit better. Now, that being said, no peak presents the same for everybody. In other words, this thing has a giant footprint. So if you're on a really narrow peak or on a peak with a lot of people up there walking around, this is going to be problematic, okay? If you're on a peak that's flat and there's not a lot of people, game on. This is my antenna I go to. But all too often, I find myself packing in both the Bandhopper and an end-fed. And the nice thing about the end-fed is virtually I can set that up by myself in any conditions. Wind, heavy fuels. You just get the mast up and then run that wire out. This is a little trickier. This requires some coordination with a helper. So let's do this. Let's get back to the hike, and then we're going to talk a little bit later in the tape about the mast, okay? And we'll get to that. So let's get back to the hike. Well, we're on top. We got the first casualty of the day. The wife, Sherry, she tangled with a yucca bush on the way up. It's ironic that we're going to be talking about masting and guying, because we picked a day. It's we're down behind it, but let's come up on top here. Wind. So we're going to have to think. Hang on a sec. So we're going to have to really think about how we're going to guide this thing up, because I don't want to blow out any sections. I've blown out lots of sections on these masts. So let's do this. Let's go back to the park in Temecula. We'll talk about masting. I'll get this thing set up, show it to you, and then we'll get on with the activation. So I thought it'd be better if we came to the park here to describe the mast that we're going to be using rather than trying to do it up on that windy mountain. So let's talk about masts real quick. There's three masts that I primarily use for SOTA activations, and the workhorse of the bunch is the SOTAbeams 7000 HDS. This is a 23 foot mast that collapses down to 23 inches, so it makes it really nice to pack in. It'll fit inside most packs, so you don't have it snagging trees and that. This is compatible with most of the SOTAbeam antennas, and it's compatible. I even will put the 2-meter Slim Jim up on this, because this seems to have enough backbone to handle it. The baby brother of that is the Mini Tactical. Now this is about half the weight, but it's going to extend to about 19.5 feet, which is still okay. I mean, it's not 23 feet, but all right. So when weight is a factor, if you're going to be packing in and you don't want to be packing a lot of extra weight, this is the one I go for. I don't use this that much, but when I need it, I really need it. Now the one I started out with is the one that a lot of people use. It's the 31-foot jack kite pole. And this pole, it's a great pole. So here's the problem, and it's not really a problem. There's two types of major divisions when you're talking about masts. One are those that are built specifically for amateur radio and the riggers of it, and those that have been improvised or pushed into service by the amateurs. This one was not intended to be used as an antenna support, but the amateurs caught on to it, and it does an adequate job. It does a good job. It's just not constructed to the same degree that the wall thickness isn't the same as you might say your other options are. That may be a problem. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit, because I've had some sections blow out on me before. And again, it's no fault of the manufacturer. It's just that they never intended this to be used for that, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put up the SOTAbeams Bandhopper using the 7000 HDS, and we'll go through that real quick, and then once we get it up, we're going to talk about using guy supports and problems I've run across in high wind conditions. So let's move on. Let's get that antenna up, and we'll walk through that real quick. Now, yeah, let's just do that. Let's get going. Okay, so we're going to put the mast up right now. I'm going to talk a little bit about it when I do it, but I'm going to also give you the link to SOTAbeams video where they put it up. It's a really great video. So let's throw this thing up, and then we're going to talk about mid-guying after that. So let's get it up. So the real important thing to remember about this is this antenna is really easy to get up, but the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want it guitar string tight. So as you bring out the antenna legs like this, typically what I do is after I pull them out, I'll get to the end of it, take about a half step back and then stake it down. Be sure to bring back your slack back to the antenna side, or you'll be pulling that through the brush, and then you're going to do that to the other side, the antenna leg. And remember, about a half step back, because you don't want this thing to be really tight, and you actually want it to form kind of like a little bit of a V backwards, because if it's straight perpendicular to one another, it's really not going to work very well. After that, I get the feed line off, and I try to put that out of the way, because the last thing you want to be doing is trampling on your RG-174. It's just not real good to be stepping on that. And then I just pull the guy string out to the back, leave it unattached to the ground. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 7000 HDS, and I'm going to get that extended. Now, be sure you really put a good twist on those sections and it's good and tight, because if you don't, I'll guarantee you that thing's going to end up right back on the ground. The ballam just attaches to the first section of the 7000 HDS. I get that in a position and pull it back to where I'm getting a little bit of tension on my antenna wires, and then I just pull back my guy and stake it down. Remember, I like a little bit of slack in all my lines. I don't want that thing to be too tight. Okay, so we've added mid-guying to this, and I'll tell you why. A round fiberglass mast really desires to be axially loaded. That means weight straight up and down the column, okay? Now the reason it tapers very thin to the top is we know it's going to bend some, and the thinness of those sections can take some of that lateral motion and damper it away. But if we happen to inadvertently transfer our forces to our center sections, we end up snapping them. We're going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about the sections I've blown out before. So we've center guyed this. This would be my setup if I had moderate to high winds, okay? It's really stable in this situation. The mid guy, again, is just part of the guying kit I bought from SOTAbeams, but you guys can make this stuff. Again, some of you guys are really good at this. So this is the setup I've got. Alright, so I want to take this opportunity to critique a couple of instances I had where we cracked a section on a mast. Now, let me start by saying, in all the time I've been putting these masts up, I have never cracked a section on a mast that was built and intended for amateur radio. It's always been on lighter masts that were kind of pushed into service by the amateur radio community. So let's look at the first one, which occurred with a Bandhopper. As you know, the Bandhopper is a top guide system where it creates a fixed point on top of your mast, and then your mast is resting against the ground, which essentially represents another fixed point. In mild to non-existent winds, that's not a problem at all. The antenna has nice axial, or the mast has nice axial loading, and there's really no problem, no lateral forces on it. Now, in my situation, a high wind situation cropped up, and I didn't recognize it. So what happens with that is, because your guide at the top, the movement of the antenna, the lateral forces, transmits to sections that aren't quite as flexible. Thus, you start getting some lateral forces on fairly stiff sections, and in my case, it blew out the third section down. Now, had I recognized the situation and I put a mid-guide point in, that would have probably cured it, because now I've got guying at the top, in the middle, and then I got a fixed point at the bottom, so that it returns the axial loading to the mast. Now, the second situation cropped up not with a Bandhopper, but a band springer. For those not familiar with the band springer antenna, it's essentially a random wire that's configured as a inverted V. Now, in this situation, I had lashed it to a fixed point at the bottom, and it was in fairly mild wind conditions, and then I had the band springer at the top. A fairly stiff wind started occurring, and normally in that, it's not a problem as long as the wind's under a certain velocity, because you want the flex at the top of that mast, because that's where the mast can take up the energy. Well, in my situation, it just got too much and started creating a problem where I was loading the tip too much, and ended up breaking the top section of the mast. Now, even if we had to put a mid-guide point on this, I'm not really certain what would have happened, because basically what you end up with that is you now have the same amount of energy, but it's now on fewer sections. So what I worry about in that situation is that it would actually magnify or tend to not solve the problem I had in the first place. So I'm not sure what the true remedy to that is, but I think that the remedy would probably be real cautious using a lightweight mast not intended for amateur radio in stiff wind conditions, because you got to be careful. And every part of the United States, a stiff wind or a heavy wind is defined in different ways. Now, out here in Southern California, we'll get westerly winds, especially when a low pressure cell's moving through, and they'll go around 30, maybe 40 knots on the mountaintops. But when things get dicey, we get a situation called a Santa Ana wind, and that's when a high pressure parks itself out over Utah and New Mexico, pushes a very stiff wind over the mountaintops, and they can get up to 50, 60 miles an hour. That's a good opportunity for you to check your weather conditions and what the wind's doing on those mountaintops, because I got to tell you, if I see it's getting up around anything over 30 miles an hour, I'm really thinking about getting back on the internet and canceling the activation, because especially if you're all by yourself up there and you're trying to put up an antenna, it can get real dicey. There's been many a situation where if I didn't have Sherry up there with me, we weren't going to get the antenna up. So just be real careful. Always keep an eye on your antenna. When the wind conditions change, let's say you start getting an afternoon wind, always watch what your mast is doing, because it's going to tell you what's happening. We're using the high hopper, which is 15, 17, 20. We're set up for 15. We're going to give it a shot. Why not? We're howling up here pretty good. This is our setup. So before I get in the wind, all we've done is there's a stake up here, and thank you, and we've lashed to it with a couple of those rubberized ties you can get at Home Depot, and then we've run the 3 legs out. I don't think was any windier, I'd run a center mast on it because I'm getting a lot of flex in my less flexible sections. So let's take a look at it real quick. So I've got my my butt pad up there, running it as a chafing block. I don't want to chafe the fiberglass on that mast, so I run it as a chafing spot so it doesn't wear through. Let's get set up for the activation. We're going to try 15, and then we're going to try 17, then we're going to go to 20. With the windlets up, we'll set up the other hopper and try 30 and 40. So let's get going. Okay, I've got summit to summit, summit to summit. Go with your call again. The summit to summit station, the summit to summit station, go again with your call. I've got a faint copy on you, faint copy. Go with your call again. CQ 20 meters for summits on the air. Kilo Golf 6, Lima, India, KG6LI, calling CQ and listening.
November 6, Sierra Delta Kilo. November 6, Sierra Delta Kilo, over.
November 6, Sierra Delta Kilo, 5959, my friend.
QSL, you're 59 into Mount Laguna, California, which is the mountains outside of San Diego. Hope you have a great hike out there. And signal's very good into Mount Laguna, over.
Well, I'm looking right up at the radar base from here, so very good, my friend.
Oh, really? Okay, so you're up on Laguna now?
Yeah, I'm down the road, down by Pioneer Mail, up on that peak. I forget the number. It's just on the south side of Sunrise Highway.
Oh, geez, we're ground wave from here. Okay. Well, enjoy the day. It's a beautiful, cool day up here, so hope you have a great hike up there. It's good to hear you.
Good to hear you, my friend. Thank you for getting in the logbook.
All right, we'll log you up to EQSL and Logbook of the World, and I'll be on the frequency for a little while should you need anything. Also monitoring 2 meter simplex. Have a great day, great hike, and be safe. November 6th, Sierra Delta Kilo, 73, sir.
73 is my friend. You take care. Thanks for the contact. CQ 20 meters for summits on the air. Kilo Golf 6, Lima, India, KG6LI, calling CQ and listening. CQ 20 meters for summits on the air. This is Kilo Golf 6, Lima, India, KG6LI, calling CQ and listening.
November Echo 4, Tango November.
November Echo 4, Tango November. You are 585858, my friend.
QSL, the 58 mark. I've got you about a 5353 in Tennessee. QSL.
QSL, my friend. Boy, that makes 2 for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. 73.
You take care. 73s, my friend. CQ 20 meters for summits on the air. Kilo Golf 6, Lima, India, KG6LI, calling CQ and listening. So we're wrapping up our activation. We did, much to my surprise, 15 meters. Had a really good opening on that. Lots of contacts on 17 CW. Did okay on 20 CW and a few on sideband. I had hoped, this is the high hopper, I had hoped to take it down, put the other hopper up. I got a wire in my CW key, it's driving me nuts. Everybody out there must think I've lost my mind up here, I'm dehydrated or something, so we're going to go fix that. We'll get back up here next year, but I think we made like 10, 15 contacts. It was really good, so the wind's really strafing us up here, so hopefully we're going to get down. So really, kind of a little strategy today, you know, by activating when you're QRP, I kind of like to activate 15, 17, and 20 because I'm kind of guaranteed that the guy that's I'm talking to me, he's got a really good antenna, and they're doing all the work right now, considering we're at a solar minimum and I'm 5 watts. But it came through. We did okay. Hope you learned something from what we did today. And if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. If you think I've lost my mind, drop them in the comments. And feel free to email me. I think my email is available through YouTube there. So we're going to continue to try to bring some thoughtful content. So I don't know where we're headed. Today we were actually supposed to be up in the San Bernardino National Forest, but there's a huge fire, the apple fire burning up on San Gorgonio, and the air quality north of here is just garbage. So you take care. Thank you. See ya. back.